Welcome to Shri Radha Govinda temple. The deity looks so beautiful. Right now, Nikunjbihari Prabhu is offering the Dhoop Aarti. And as soon as he leaves, we'll be reading from Ramayana. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. As you know, we have been reading this since last 9 days. And tomorrow is going to be a big day. Tomorrow is going to be the Ramanavami celebration. So please do come and enjoy the whole day in the service of Lord Sri Rama. Right now also a lot of devotees have already come. They are in the kitchen and they are preparing for the feast, etc. Tomorrow is also having some entertainment programs for you. And although it is the last day today, I am planning to continue to read Ramayana for your benefit. And we will be open live streaming from 4:30 in the morning all the way up to late night. So you can see all the aarti and different programs going on in the temple. So please join us tomorrow also. You have to log in, not the same link, but you have to log in to ISKCON NYC TV. That's a link you have to join on. Since 4:30 in the morning, first thing, ISKCON New York TV. So let's get back to our sessions. It was very nice to know all about the pastimes of Lord Ramachandra. And now we continue to read about Lord Ramachandra. So, reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 9, Chapter 11. Everything is actually purported by Srila Prabhupada. And all the translation of the verses, word-to-word translation, and all the explanation about it is by Srila Prabhupada. The first verse goes like this. Shri Shukavach Bhagavanatmanatmanam Rama Uttama Kalpake Sarvadeva Mayam Deva Mijetha Charyavan Makhe Bhagavanatmanatmanam Rama Uttam Kalpake Sarvadeva Mayam Devam Ijetha Charyavan Makhe. Shukadeva Goswami said, thereafter, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Ramchandra, accepted an Acharya and performed sacrifice, yagnas, with opulent paraphernalias. Thus he himself worshipped himself, for he is the Supreme Lord of all demigods. So it is said that Vishnum Bhutva Vishnum Vyajet. The only way To please Vishnu is to become as pure as Vishnu. So Lord Ramchandra is himself is Vishnu, one of the incarnations of Vishnu, himself the supreme personality of Godhead as good as Lord Sri Krishna. So he arranged this sacrifice. And by this example, he trying to know that any work and any endeavor that we do, we must consider it as a sacrifice. And when you do the fire sacrifice, there are so many priests involved. One is the Acharya, who is in charge of this particular fire sacrifice. Then they have Udgata, who is actually singing melodiously the verses for the fire sacrifice. The next is Hota, one who is offering the oblation in the fire. That's the Hota. And one is Advaryu, who is also assisting this fire sacrifice. And then the person who is supervising the fire is a Brahman. Besides this, you will also find some names like Purohit, who is making the primary arrangements for the success of the fire sacrifice. So far as the group of Brahmins is concerned, there are so many involved. And on top of it, they have this Yajman. The reason I'm explaining is that every year, on the last day, like today is the last day, what we used to do after the so many days of Saptah for Bhagavatam or 9 days for Ramayana, on the last day we used to set up a little arena here where we used to set up the fire sacrifice. And then we will have Brahmins sitting in different directions. And we will do a small fire sacrifice because like reading itself is less than 2 hours. And on top of it, we have to do this fire sacrifice. So we don't do a very elaborate fire sacrifice, but still it's done very, very perfectly. Right now, all our sponsors are away from New York City, and that's why we didn't do it this year. But in future, if the party or the sponsors are available and they have access to the temple, we'll do the fire sacrifice. We'll start doing that again. Hotre dadadadisham pranchi brahmane lakshinam prabhu advaryeve pratichemba uttaram samagayasa. So here, Lord Ramchandra sits as a host, Yajman. And then, when he sees these Brahmins around fire sacrifice, serving him to do this success of the fire sacrifice, he decided to renounce not only him, but also Mother Sita. By the way, this is the last fire sacrifice done by Ramchandra and Sita. Eventually, whatever Ramchandra is doing may have to do without Mother Sita. So, Lord Ramchandra gave the entire east to Hota priest, the entire south to the Brahma priest, the west to the Advaryu priest, and the north to the Udgata priest. The reciter of Samaveda in this way, he donated his kingdom. So all the priests involved, they were given this kingdom. Ityatam tadalankara vasobhyam vashetam tasaragna pivaidyehi saumangalyaveshishtam. After just giving everything in charity to the Brahmanas, Lord Ramachandra retained only his personal garments, and similarly, the queen, Mother Sita, was left with only her nose ring and nothing else. So Mother Sita decided to keep only nose ring and give away everything. All the Brahmanas who were engaged in the various activities of the sacrifice were very pleased with Lord Ramachandra. Tetu Brahmanya Devayasya Vatsalyam Viksha Sanstudam Pritaha Kindiyastasmai Pratyarpeda Babashire. Thus, with melted hearts, they returned all the property received from him and spoke as follows. So Brahmana, just as a token, accepted his kingdom. But they are Brahmins, and they don't need anything anymore than bread and butter, which can keep this body going. As long as they can keep the body and the soul together, they are not greedy, and they didn't want this kingdom. So what they did is that they gave away back to Ramachandra. Apratam nastvaya kimnu Bhagavan Bhuvaneshwara Yannontan Radayam Vishwa Tamohansi Swaruchisha. O Lord, you are the master of the entire universe. What have you not given to us? You have entered the core of our hearts and dissipated the darkness of our ignorance by your effulgence. This is a supreme gift. We do not need a material donation. Same thing. Later on, we'll come across an incident where Love and Kush are singing Rama written by sage Valmiki. And they were singing for Lord Ramchandra ji in his palace, actually during the Ashwamedh Yagna. At that time, Lord Ramchandra asked Lakshmana that please give them as much gold they want, as much silver they want, as much diamonds they want, whatever they want. They sing beautifully. Give them. The Love and Kush said, Maharaj, we are brahmacharis. We eat roots and fruits, and we only drink water. We don't anything else in this world. What we are going to do with this gold and silver and diamond and things? So same thing happened here, that Brahmana didn't want anything. Namo Brahmanya Devaya Ramaya Kuntamedase Uttam Shloka Dhuriyaya Nasya Dandarpitangraye. O Lord, you are the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who have accepted the Brahmanas as your worshipable deity. Your knowledge and memory are never disturbed by anxiety. You are the chief of all famous persons within this world, and your lotus feet are worshipped by sages who are beyond the jurisdiction of punishment. O Lord Ramchandra, Let us offer our respectful obeisances unto you. Kadachilloka jignasu Rigudo ratram alakshitam Charanmacho shunudramo Bharyamuddishya katsachit. Shukadeva Goswami said, once while Lord Ramchandra was walking at night incognito, hiding himself by disguise to find out the people's opinion about himself, he heard a man speaking unfavorably about his wife, Sita Devi. Naham bivarmitvam dusta asatim paravishmigam straino hi vibruyat sitam ramo naham bhaje punam. The man was chastising his wife. Speaking to his unchaste wife, the man said, you go to another man's house, and therefore you are unchaste and polluted. I shall not maintain you anymore. A handpicked husband like Lord Ramchandra may accept a wife like Sita, who went to another man's house. But I am not handpicked like Ram, and therefore I shall not accept you again. So this is again a sad news. Although he was such a perfect king, so religious and devotee king, so that no one will die in his kingdom. No one will be deceased in his kingdom. No one will suffer without anything in his kingdom. And still, look at the citizens of his kingdom. They speak against him behind his back. So he found out and he felt very sorry about it. 3 o'clock at night, I was thinking about wrapping up today the pastimes. And I was thinking that, they want us to worship Lord Ramchandra as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And look at him. Look at Mother Sita and Lakshmana. Every step I come across something that bothers us, we're going to take it. They only not make you suffer, the readers of the Ramayana, but they themselves actually suffered a lot in their life. So I was actually praying that maybe there is some explanation about this. And early morning, this morning, I tried to read and find out the solution of this. And I came across a story. This is a dialogue between Sumant, who is one of the chief ministers, and Lakshmana. When Lakshmana had to follow the order of Lord Sri Ram and abandon Mother Sita all by herself in a jungle, he was so much in pain and sorrow. He moved around with dejection of his heart and kept crying. So, Samant, he says, let me explain you why all these things is happening. So he said, if you know this, then please tell me. We all should know this is a secret based on this particular story. The whole Ramayana is actually created. So what happened? That one time, Durvasa Muni and Vasishtha Muni were meeting. Maharaja Dashrath, father of Lord Ramachandra ji, he happened to pass by and stop by to greet these sages. And they asked Dashrath Raja, Maharaj, if you have few minutes, please join us. So Maharaja Dashrath sat with them. And nothing was started like a Ramayana. He was just ruling Ayodhya. And there was no any problem or anything. But Durvasa Muni says, I have to reveal some prophecy. There are some predictions. And that's what's going to happen. And I would like to warn you about it. So Maharaja Dashrath said, please tell me. I'm very curious to know that. So that I can prepare myself. And I can prepare people involved in it. This is long before even Lord Rama was born. So Durvasa Muni says, there are demigods and there are demons. And continuously they have been fighting. In one fight, the demons, since they were defeated, they started running away from the sin. And Lord Vishnu, who was the chief of the demigods, tried to catch them and kill them. But they, because they were demons and had a lot of powers, they turned themselves into ordinary citizens. And they approach wife of Bhrigu Muni, who was all by herself in her ashram. Bhrigu Muni was not there. So this asuras, the demons, ask Bhrigu Muni's wife that, can we spend a night here? We surrender to you. Please help us. So Bhrigu Muni's wife says, okay, no problem. And then they stayed there. Meanwhile, Mahavishnu is coming there with all the demigods. And they found that, whoa, what we are looking for, the demons, they are hiding here, right in the ashram of Bhrigu Muni. Who permitted them? Who has given them the shelter? So then they found that Bhrigu Muni's wife was there. So what happened, that Vishnu is always there with his disc. He's equipped with Shanga Chakra Gada Padma. So he's using his chakra, his disc, and cuts hair of Bhrigu Muni's wife. Now, she was innocent. She didn't know anything about it. But without asking for any kind of explanation or anything, because she gave a shelter to the demons, she was killed by Mahavishnu. Bhrigu Muni came home and found dead body of his wife. He felt a lot of separation. And he I was thinking, who must have done this thing? My wife. We both are like sages living on roots and fruits and drinking Ganges water. We don't bother the material world. And who could be this who may have entered in my ashram without permission and kill my wife? And then he meditated and found that this is Mahavishnu using his disc, cutting hair of his wife. So he appeared before Lord Vishnu. And he says, as a Brahmana, I'm cursing you, that someday you will be born as ordinary human being and you will have to suffer separation from your wife. So that is why, because of the curse of a Brahmana, Lord Vishnu, when he came as Ramachandra, although his mission was to get rid of Ravana and Kumbhakarna, because of the curse, he had to suffer every step. Now, we go back where we left out. So when Lord Ramchandra heard that citizens are talking behind his back, but they don't know. I have already tested Mother Sita. After killing Ravana, I also consider how can I take Sita back to Ayodhya. It was just to allay these doubts that I made Princess of Vidarbha enter the fire in the presence of all demigods and sages. Vayu and Agni declared that Sita was pure, and within my heart, I also knew she was chaste. So I accepted her back. So Valmiki ji says that Patyarthe tata Sita Vivesha Jvalanam tada Pratyaksham tava saumitre Devanam Havyavahana. And now, however, rumors are spreading everywhere and I am being blamed in my own kingdom. So that is why he's talking to Lakshmana next day. And he says, Ashramo divya sankashas tamasatiram ashrita tatretam vijane deshe visrujya raghunandana. Lakshmana, tomorrow at dawn you must take Sita to the banks of Ganga and take her on the tour of ashramas of great sages. Then abandon her near the hermitage of great sage Valmiki on the banks of river Tamasa and return to Ayodhya alone. And then he says, Ganga tire maya devi Rushinam ashramam shuma Shighram gatva tu vedehi Shasanat parthivasyana. He says, Lakshmana. At that time, Lakshmana, he became broken-hearted to hear Ram speaking this way. However, since he was the obedient servant of his elder brother, he assumed meditation. Then early the next morning, Lakshmana went to Sita's aid. Your husband has ordered me to fulfill your desire. I shall escort you to the banks of Ganga so that you can worship the great sages residing there. Sumantra is ready with his chariot, so I request you to come there. Ashubhani bahunyeva pashyami Raghunandana Nanam me spuratyadya Gatruta kampascha gyayate. Lakshmana helped onto the chariot and they quickly departed. However, while going along, Sita began to speak, anxiously saying, O Lakshmana, my left eye has suddenly begun to twitch and my mind feels strangely uneasy. Suddenly I feel very weak and the earth seems to have taken a gloomy aspect. I hope Ram is all right. So she is getting all kind of omen signals while they are trying to depart. By evening, Sita, Lakshmana and Sumantra reached the bank of river Gomati and spent the night there. Early the next morning, they continued their journey. By afternoon, they came to the bank of Ganga. Upon dismounting their chariot, however, Lakshmana broke down and cried, for he could not longer contain his grief. Feeling great concern, Sita inquired, O Lakshmana, what is wrong? Now that we have reached our destination, you should be happy. Indeed, your sadness makes me uneasy. Have just 2 days of separation from Rama brought you so much anguish? I love Rama dearly, yet I have not become so disturbed. Please compose yourself, for we must now cross the Ganga to have the audience of great sages. Thereafter, we can quickly return to Ayodhya, for I am also long to see Lord Ramachandra. So, then, Rudantam achalam yasmad आर्येण धीमता अस्मिन् निमित्ते वेदेहि लोकस्य वचनीकृता. After wiping the tears from his eyes, Lakshmana arranged for a boat and escorted Sita across the Ganga. Upon reaching the other side, Lakshmana tearfully confessed, O Princess of Vidarbha, the all-good Lord Rama has entrusted me with a most painful task. Indeed, by performing this duty, I shall become infamous in the eyes of the world. It would have been better if I had died rather than executing your husband's order. O noble lady, please forgive me for what I am being forced to do. Lakshmana fell to the ground, weeping bitterly with great indignation. Sita asked, O Lakshmana, what is the matter? I cannot understand what you are saying. Please tell me clearly what is troubling you. Has some great misfortune befallen Rama that you don't have the courage to tell me? With his head bowed down, Lakshmana replied in a voice choked with tears. He says, while sitting in the royal court, Rama learned the rumors were circulating throughout Ayodhya, accusing him of impropriety. Everywhere people blame Rama for accepting you back. So they are pointing at this impropriety. This public censure pains him unbearably. O Sita, I know that you are faultless and so does Rama. Therefore, do not misunderstand the king, for he has done or he has been forced to relinquish you to maintain the good name of Ikshvaku dynasty. O princess of Vidarbha, do not be broken-hearted, for the abode of the Brahmanas that are situated at the banks of Ganga are celestially beautiful. You should take shelter of great sage Valmiki, for he was a good friend of your father-in-law, Maharaja Dashrath. Always think of Ram within your heart and remain unflinchingly devoted to him. In this way, you will attain the highest happiness, O Mother Janki. Shrutva parishado madhya rupavadam sudarunam pure janapadeschaiva tvakrute janakatmaje. And then, after saying that, Kintu papam krutam purvam ko adaire viyojita yaham shuddha samachara tyakta nrupatinam sati. So, again he says, upon hearing of the cruel destiny, Sita immediately fainted, then coming to her senses, she pitifully cried out, "Now I can see that this life was awarded to me simply for suffering. What great sin did I commit in the past? What poor girl's marriage did I obstruct to now cause Rama to cast me off? I faithfully followed my husband into exile and remained contained despite innumerable hardships. O Lakshmana, now shall I be able to survive here alone? What will I tell the sages when they ask me why I was abandoned? What wrong have I have done? I would gladly end my life by throwing myself into the Ganges, but that would bring about the end of Ram's dynasty because I am pregnant and I am carrying babies in my womb. Becoming somewhat more composed, Sita told Lakshmana, I know that you are merely carrying out your duty. I do not blame you. Go back to Ayodhya now and offer my respectful obeisances to mother-in-law. Touch the feet of my husband and please deliver the following message. Janasi chayatha shuddha siddhadatve naragha bhakta chu paraya yukta hita chu tamanityasha. O Ram, you know that my devotion has been fixed upon you without deviation. You know of my chastity and my unfailing love. Still, from fear of dishonor and shame, you have spurned me, O Ram, my Lord and the only refuge. You should not have done so. My dear husband, I do not grieve for my own misfortune, for I know that I am faultless. For a chaste woman, the husband is as good as God. Therefore, I must accept that whatever you may order is the best for my welfare, even if it means giving up my life. Lakshmana circumambulated Sita and crossed the Ganga's opposite shore. As Lakshmana mounted his chariot, he turned his head just to have one last glimpse of Mother Sita. Likewise, Sita gazed sorrowfully at Lakshmana as he receded into distance. Then alone and unprotected, Sita fell on ground, crying uncontrollably. So, this is what's happening. And at that time, when Sita was abandoned in the middle of nowhere, she kept crying loudly. And then, Drastasmabi prarudita draddam shokaparayana anarha dukha shokana ekadina nasavat. It says, some disciples of Valmiki happened to see Sita weeping, and they ran to their master saying, "O master, come quickly. There is a woman who resembles the goddess of fortune herself, sitting alone in the forest, crying." By dint of his mystic power, Valmiki could understand everything. He rushed to the place where bereaved Sita sat. The sage humbly approached her and said, "O devoted wife of Lord Rama, O daughter of King Janaka, by the strength of my austerities, I know that what takes place within these three worlds. Thus I understand your plight. Please do not be afraid. Near my ashram, there are ascetic women who will devoted to care for you as if you were their daughter. Please come with me now and consider this to be your new home." Valmiki then took Sita and placed her under the care of female ascetics. So, it is sad, but we have to keep going. It says that highly astonished Rama, when this particular whole incident was narrated by Valmiki, and when Ram and Kush are reciting the Ramayana to Lord Rama, highly astonished Rama inquired, "How many parts are there in this epic poem, and which rishi composed it?" The twins replied, "O king, the great sage Valmiki is our spiritual master, and he is the author of this great literature that depicts the entire history of your life. The poem consists of 6 parts, and the 7 describe your concluding pastimes." So, Kim pramanamidam kavyam ka pratishtha mahatmana karta kavasya mahata kvachasu munipungava. Ram and Kush asked Lord, Love and Kush asked Lord Rama that if you desire, we shall recite the entire Ramayana during the period of your sacrifice. So he was doing this fire sacrifice, but a lot of people were there. And Rama was also very curious to know what exactly happened once the Sita was abandoned, and he was more curious to know who these two children are and how come they know so much about the Ikshvaku dynasty. So thereafter, Rama listened to unbounded pleasure as love and Kush recited the Ramayana for many days. At last, Rama concluded, these boys must be the twin sons of Sita. There is no doubt about it. Rama's heart melted due to the affection for his sons. After considering the matter very deeply, he called for messengers of impeccable etiquette. He ordered them, go at once to the ashram of great sage Valmiki and speak to him the following words. Tell him that if Sita is indeed blameless, if her character is faultlessly pure, then let her come here with your sanction so that she can prove her innocence before all the assembled citizens. O messengers, please hurry back with their replies. Let Sita come tomorrow at dawn and establish her purity in my presence. When Sita heard Rama's proposal, she could not comply further. She considered such a public trial a great humiliation. Thus, coming to the firm decision in her mind, Sita dressed herself in reddish clothes and started for Ayodhya with Valmiki. A large crowd had assembled from all over the Koshala kingdom, for everyone was very curious to see Sita. Indeed, all of the demigods headed by Lord Brahma, as well as the foremost sages, Nagas, Siddhas, and other celestial beings, came to witness the trial of Sita's purity. Finally, Valmiki arrived, followed by Sita, her head bent low, her hands joined in supplication. Tears filled her large eyes, and Lord Rama was firmly fixed in her heart. As the assembled citizens murmured in anticipation, Valmiki approached Lord Rama and said, O son of Dashrath, here is impeccably righteous Sita, whom you abandoned out of fear of public scandal. She has come here to prove her purity. Thus she obeys your command. And then it's simply unbelievable. The person like Valmiki had to go through what is now we are witnessing. Sage Valmiki says, Bahu arsha sastrani tapascharya maya krutam nopashniyam phalam tasya justeyam dimaithili Bahu varsha sastrani tapascharya mahakrutam nopasniyam phalam tasya dusteyam yadimaithili manasa karmana vacha bhutapurvena kilvisham yasyam phalamachyami apapa maithili yadi manasa karmana vacha bhutapurvena kilvisham tasyam phalanmashyami apapa maithili yadi. aham pancheshu bhuteshu manasyaste suraghavam vachinda sita shuddheti jagravana nirjare. Aham pancheshu bhuteshu manasyaste suraghavam vichinda sita shuddheti jagrahavana nirjare. So this is very sad that the topmost yogi, one who was a very close friend, bosom friend of Maharaja Dashrath, in his old age had to say this word. And he says, O son of Dashrath, here is impeccably righteous Sita, whom you abandoned out of fear of public scandal. She has come here to prove her purity. Thus she awaits your command. O Ram, I who have never uttered a lie, make the following declaration. If Sita is tainted by even the slightest guilt, then may the results of my accumulated austerities prove eternally fruitless. Who is speaking this? If Sita is tainted by even the slightest guilt, then may the results of my accumulated austerities prove eternally fruitless. Now, these Brahmanas, these sages, are actually included in the definition or introduction of Ramayana. It says here, countless aeons ago, when man and animals could speak together. Listen to this, how they describe. Man and animals speak together. When Jatayu speaks, the bird, Ram and Lakshman listen. The monkey, Sugriv, Vali and Hanuman speak. Ram and Sita, Lakshman, everyone hear. When the snakes, they speak on the battlefield that binds Lakshman and Ram with Nagpash. They understand their language. When Garuda, the eagle, comes to drive away those snakes, and talking to Ram and Lakshman, introduces himself that I am your carrier, Garuda, in your Golok Vrindavan. And I know that these snakes are very fearful to see me, and in order to drive them away, I have come to help you. When he speaks, they can communicate it, that they can understand. That is a story of a dog, if we have time, we'll talk about. That when the dog is speaking, Lord Ramchandra as a king sitting on the throne, he can understand language of a dog. And dog understand language of Lord Rama and all the citizens. So countless eons ago, when man and animals could speak together, and the powerful Brahmanas and sages could effect miracles. These are the sages who could easily solve the problem by manifesting some miracles. The uncontrollable king Ravana was terrorizing the universe. The Ramayana records the adventure of Rama, the Lord of righteousness, as he struggles to overcome the forces of Ravana. This absorbing narration has delighted and enlightened countless generations all over the world. and its timeless spiritual insights are compelling relevant to today's confused world. The confused world may get some hints out of this. Bahuvarsh sahasrani tapascharya mahakrita. The austerities that I perform have some meaning. I never lied in my life. Right? And that's why I'm betting on Mother Sita that if Sita is tempted by even the slightest guilt, then may the results of my accumulated austerities prove eternally fruitless. The only thing Brahmanas are carrying as a bank balance, as their own treasure, is their own austerities. But he wants to lose this. He says, I'm ready to lose if Sita is not innocent. Although you loved Sita deeply and were convinced her innocence, you still discarded her out of fear of public opinion. By dint of my spiritual vision, I can understand Sita's complete purity. Thus I have come to proclaim this truth to you. Just see the austerities of sage Valmiki. Whatever happened with Rama, Sita, Lakshman, they were all by themselves. No one joined them from Ayodhya. You don't find any human beings with them. No one was witnessing what they were going through. And still, everything was revealed to sage Valmiki so that he could write 24,000 verses of Ramayana with all the details and without missing any details. Of course, at one point he asked Bharadwaj, who was assisting him and keeping count of the verses and all that. And he says, my dear son, how many verses did I write? And Bharadwaj says, my Lord, my spiritual master, you already spoke 24,000 verses. At that time, Valmiki ji realized that he has made this Ramayana too long, difficult to handle for one person, difficult to handle within 9 days of Katha. So, he started wrapping up Rama Katha short, and at the end he just blessed the people who listen to Ram Katha, the people who make it available to the general community by sponsoring Ram Katha. He just wrote few verses and blessed the book called Ramayana. Now, when he said these words, Rama gazed upon Sita for a moment and announced to the assembly, so be it. I accept all the great sage has said. Previously, the demigods also testified as to Sita's purity, and I happily took her back to Ayodhya. Rama reminded, Patyarthe tata Sita vivesha jvalam tada pratyaksham saumetre devanam avivahanam. When Sita was tested that here is a fire, burning fire, and anybody entering in that kind of intense fire, especially fire put on by Ram and Lakshman, especially wind god and fire god invoked and invited by Mahavishnu himself. Fire cannot go wrong. Fire will never discriminate. Even in our ordinary life, if I touch the open electric wire, it can kill me. If I enter the fire, it will burn me. Fire doesn't look at the person, whether it's a man or woman, whether it's poor or rich, whether it's a devotee or demon. His business is to burn, burn, and burn. That's it. So here Ramchandra reminded the pratyarthe tatha sita vivesha jvalanam tatha pratyaksham ta saumetre devanam havivahanam. And that is why when Sita entered, it is said that one who entered the fire, one who was taken away by Ravana, one who suffered under the Ashok trees, one who was tortured by demons and demonesses, that Sita was Maya Sita, a Chaya Sita. It was just a shadow of Sita. There was no substance. It was not a real Sita. Real Sita is a goddess. She has ability to vanish. She could easily hide and projected Maya Sita, an illusory form of Sita, which cannot be touched, which cannot be raped, which cannot be tortured. You can't do anything about it. It's just a shadow. She did it. And when the Chaya Sita or Maya Sita entered the fire, the real Sita came out of the fire. And it was not alone Sita came out. The fire god Agni and wind god Vayu, they both escorted her out of the fire. Like a goldsmith is pulling out a piece of gold from the fire and puts it in your hand. This is your bangle. This is your ornament. This is pure gold. Same way, wind god and fire god had given me my Sita back and burned the Maya Sita and Chaya Sita. So he says, I know. Rama gazed upon Sita for a moment and announced to assembly, so be it, I accept all great sage has said. Previously the demigods also testified as to Sita's purity, and I happily took her back to Ayodhya. However, people began to criticize me, and thus, with great reluctance, I sent her away. Now I have decided that if Sita can prove her innocence before this assembly, then I shall again accept her as a wife I dearly love. So Rama says, Lokapavado balvan yena taktyahi mechili gneyam lok bhayad brahman napetya vijanata. Paritaktya maya Sita tad bhavan kshantumam arhasi janami chema putroma yamajato kushalavo. So not only he accepted Sita as his wife, but he boldly declared that these children who are reciting Ramayana, who's singing Ramayana, in fact, so melodiously, so boldly. They are also my children. And however, people began to criticize me, and thus with great reluctance I sent her away. Now I have decided that if Sita can prove her innocence before this assembly, then I shall again accept her as my wife. I dearly love. Everyone fell silent, and all eyes became fixed upon Sita, who stood with her gaze lowered and her head bent slightly downward. You should visualize this. It's a very touching and exact description written by Valmiki sage. Everyone fell silent, and all eyes became fixed upon Sita, who stood with her gaze lowered and her head bent slightly downward. After a short pause, Sita said to the assembly, it's very painful to read this. Particularly, there is 3 sentences spoken by Mother Sita, composed by Valmiki sage, is really touching. And she says, Yathaham ragavadanyam manasapi na chintaye tatha me madhavi devi vivaram datumarsi manasa karmana vacha yatha ramam samarchaye tatha me madhavi devi vivaram datumarasi yathe tat satyamuktam me vedmiratm param nacha tatha me madhavi devi vivaram datumarasi. Madhavi is Madhav's wife, Lord Krishna's wife. She is Mother Earth. And being Madhav's wife, Sita is addressing Mother Earth as Madhavi Devi. And she says, O Goddess of Earth, please hear my petition. If since the time of my marriage, I ever thought of anyone but Rama, or if I ever loved any man but Rama, then refuse me shelter. However, if I have only dwelt in Rama in thought, word and action, then please give me a place within you, so I need not experience the shame of facing the slanderous people. Manasa karmana vacha bhutpurvena kilbisham. Manasa karmana vacha yatha ramam samarchayet. Tatha me madhavi devi vivaram datum arhasi. If so, then please accept me and give me a place within you, so I need not experience the shame of facing these slanderous people. What else can you talk? What else can you find a word in dictionary? People are talking behind, back of even Lord Ramchandra and Mother Sita. So then it says, Tasminstu dharani devi bahubhyam gruyamaithilim swagaten abhinanyedhyam asane chopaveshita. Tasminstu dharani devi बाहुभ्याम गृहमैथिलीं स्वागतेन अभिनन्द्याम् आसने चोपवेश्यत. While Sita spoke, the earth suddenly opened up, and from the crevice the goddess Bhumi majestically rose up, seated upon a golden throne, borne by divine serpents. The goddess welcomed Sita, took her in her arms, and seated her at her side on the throne. Then, while from the sky and from the earth, the demigods and sages, kings and common people looked on in astonishment, the celestial throne slowly descended into the bowels of earth. So she disappeared. There was uproar as well as being uttered, exclamations of wonder, praising Sita for this glorious confirmation of her purity. From the heavens, the demigods rained down showers of flowers, and there was singing, dancing, and playing of musical instruments. After Sita disappeared from sight, tears welled up in the Rama's eyes, and anger flared within his mind. Rama lowered his head and declared, Earth, I order you to return Sita immediately. Open up and bring her here, so we may again be united. Sita is your daughter, and I am your son-in-law. Give me Sita without delay, or I shall crush your mountains, burn your forests, and smash you into atoms. Lord Rama became so angry, and he wanted to destroy this earth so that every particle can be seen in form of atoms, and you will never ever see any mountains, any trees, any human beings even living on it. The whole planet would be destroyed by the order of Lord Ramachandra. Lord Brahma then spoke to Apis and raving, tortured Rama. O Lord, please remember your identity. You are the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Vishnu, and Sita is the goddess of fortune herself. Sita has now entered the planet of the Nagas, and very shortly she will be uniting with you in your transcendental abode, Vaikuntha. O Supreme Hero, Lord of the universe and maintainer of all that lives, why must I remind you of your divine position? O Ram, give up your grief and hear from your sons the concluding portion of great narration that describes your transcendental pastimes. This epic poem composed by Valmiki will spread your glories throughout the three worlds for as long as the universe continues to exist. Saying this, Lord Brahma disappeared. Rama went to Valmiki's ashram with Love and Kush. After passing the night grieving over the loss of Sita, Rama summoned all the sages and requested his sons to recite Uttarkand of Ramayana. This is a very wonderful statement written where there is a word Uttarkand. The reason is that some mental speculators, those who do not have faith in Lord, faith in Ram Katha, faith in sage Valmiki, they said there is nothing like Uttarkand. Ramayana was finished when he won over Lanka and then started ruling over Ayodhya. And this is where the story ended. There is no Uttarakhand. But this particular word is confirmation and verification that yes, there is not a single story or scripture. If it has a beginning, it must have end. And that's why Uttarakhand is there. And there is an end. So thereafter Rama returned to Ayodhya, but found life barren without his beloved Sita. Rama continued to rule over the kingdom strictly, according to religious principles. Thus, the rains showered forth regularly, crops were abundant, and everywhere were seen signs of prosperity. Then, after the passage of many years, Kaushalya passed away, then Sumitra, and then Kaikeyi, so that they all became reunited with Maharaja Dashrath in the transcendental realm. Sometime thereafter, Yudhajit, the king of Kaikeyi, came to see Lord Rama at Ayodhya, requesting him to conquer the Gandharva king, who resided north of river Indus. Rama immediately appointed Bharata's two sons, Taksha and Purash, as rulers of the Gandharva kingdom. Bharata then proceeded with a large army and established Taska in Takshashila and Pushkala. In Pushkalasvati. Finally, after 5 years passed, Bharata returned to Ayodhya. Rama then made Lakshmana's two sons, Angad and Chandraketu, the rulers of Kurupath. After bringing that territory under subjugation, Lakshmana had accompanied his two sons and returned to Ayodhya after an absence of 1 year. Since the closing of Lord Rama's earthly pastimes was close at hand, time personified came to Ayodhya one day in guise of wandering ascetic. After arriving at palace gate, time announced to Lakshmana, I am a messenger from Lord Brahma. Since I have come to a very important mission, I desire to see Rama at once. When time in the form of dazzling effulgence sage entered the palace, Rama respectfully seated him upon a golden throne and inquired, O Holy One, what is the nature of this visit? Is there some message you have come to deliver? The messengers replied, O King, if you honor the wishes of Lord Brahma, then our meeting must be held in private. For these words are not meant for others. Indeed, let it be known for certain that anyone who overhears our conversation will soon meet with death. O Rama, you must promise that if anyone comes and interrupts our meeting, then you will unhesitatingly give up all the connections with him. Ram replied, let it be so. To Lakshmana he ordered, dismiss the doorman. I want you to personally guard the entrance, for this meeting must be strictly private. Thereafter, when the two were alone, death in the form of the messenger said, in a previous birth, I was the son of Lord Brahma. Now I am appearing as all-devouring eternal time, Kala. O King, the universal grandsire speak unto you the following words. O Lord Rama, O Supreme Personality of Godhead, I offer my obeisances unto you. After dissolution of the universe, you sleep in the waters of devastation in the form of Garbhodakshaya Vishnu. Then when there is a need of recreating the universe as it was before, I, Lord Brahma, take birth from the effulgent lotus that grows from your navel. After my birth, I was entrusted with the creation of the three worlds. In turn, I requested you to assume the form of Kshirodakshaya Vishnu to become the maintainer of the universe. Ever since that time, you have appeared in many transcendental forms. Whenever there is a need to relieve the burden of the world, now you have appeared to kill Ravana and rule over the earth for 11,000 years. O Lord, since this allotted time is now concluded, you need no longer remain within this material world. If you so desire, you may once again ascend to heaven to resume your rule over the demigods. O all-pervading strength and my very existence, let me therefore offer my respectful obeisances unto you. After listening to Kal, Ram smiled and replied, You have spoken truthfully. May there be all good fortune to you. You may now go and tell Lord Brahma that because I have fulfilled the purpose of the demigods, I will very soon return to my own transcendental abode. As Rama and the messenger were conversing, it happened that Durvasa Muni arrived at the royal palace. When Lakshmana went to receive him, the sage insisted, I am here on most urgent business and must see Lord Rama at once. Lakshmana replied, Rama has given me strict order that he cannot be interrupted under any circumstances. O foremost of sages, please be patient and wait for a short while. At this, Durvasa lost his temper. With fiery eyes, he screamed, Go and announce my presence at once. If you are so foolish to disobey me, then I shall curse Rama, Bharat, yourself, and entire Ikshvaku dynasty, and the entire Kosala kingdom. Hurry, for my patience wears thin. Lakshmana knew that to interrupt Rama's conversation with Kal would soon bring about his own death. However, thinking of Durvasa's curse, he concluded, it is better if I suffer alone rather than cause everyone's ruination. Lakshmana then entered the room, being informed of Durvasa's arrival. Rama took leave of Kala and hurriedly went out to meet the sage. As he stood before Durvasa Muni, with folded hands, Rama inquired, O foremost of ascetic Brahmana, what can I do to please you? Durvasa replied, O righteous king, I have just now completed a 1,000 years fast. What can you give me to eat? Thereafter Rama provided Durvasa with a sumptuous feast, and the sage was highly gratified. So no wonder the fast food chain and at least a slice of pizza is available nowadays to satisfy this kind of sages who are looking for food and trying to kill people for no reason. After Durvasa's departure, however, Rama remembered the promise he had made to Kal. Thus a horrible grief overtook him. Fearing the loss of his most intimate associate, Rama stood as though deprived of reason, his head bowed down in dejection. Lakshmana then approached his aggrieved brother and cheerfully said, O Ram, do not lament for that which is inevitable under the control of supreme destiny. Duty must be carried out without attachment or aversion. Therefore, keep your promise and banish me without hesitation. Rama summoned his ministers, and after describing all that happened, he asked for advice. Finally, after a long silence, Vasishtha said, My dear Rama, by dint of my ascetic prowess, I could foresee all this happening to you. Now you must keep your promise, otherwise your lifelong adherence to righteousness will be blighted. With the decay of religious principles, the world gradually comes to perish. Therefore, adhere to truthfulness and banish Lakshmana. Ram appeared to think deeply over the matter. Then he announced to the assembly, adhering to righteousness, I hereby order the banishment of Lakshmana from Ayodhya. The ministers all applauded Rama's decision. And after that, Lakshmana went to the banks of river Saryu and absorbed his mind in the practice of mystic yoga. Then, when the time became ripe, King Indra suddenly appeared there, riding a celestial chariot. Thus, in his self-same transcendental body, Lakshmana ascended to heaven amidst the singing of Gandharvas, the dancing of Apsaras, and showers of fragrant flowers. After Lakshmana's disappearance, Lord Ram decided to install Bharat upon the royal throne so that he could be free to follow the Lakshmana's path. However, Bharat refused to occupy the throne, for he preferred to accompany Rama to the forest rather than enjoy the kingdom without him. Rama then divided the kingdom between his sons, giving Kush the north part of Kosala and Love the southern part. After the coronation, Rama embraced his twin sons and then presented them vast amount of gold, jewel, thousands of chariots and countless horses and elephants. When the citizens heard Ram's intention to retire to forest, they became determined to follow him. Their grief due to the impending separation was unbearable. Shatrughna was also intent upon following Raman, and thus, when Lord finally came out of the city, there was a great procession following him. Indeed, because of their love and devotion, every living entity followed Ram to the forest, so that not even an animal could be seen in Ayodhya. While Rama silently walked along, everyone could see him that he was exhibiting a mood of complete detachment and indifference, as if preparing to give up the world. Rama's potencies appeared in personified form to accompany him. Shri walked on Rama's right side and Bhumi on his left. Shakti walked in front, and innumerable other energies followed Rama, including Omkar, Gayatri, and Vedas. Next, Sadrugna and his family followed Bharata. Then came two Brahmanas who tended the sacrifice fire. Behind the Brahmanas walked all the citizens, according to their position. Following them came to the animals. So, this is a little procession, and let us all join that procession wholeheartedly. Whatever is good must come to an end sometime. So today was the last day, and we are ending Ram Katha here, joining the procession with Ram and others, and we will remember these moments. While concluding the Ramayana, Maharishi Valmiki says, Shrunan Ramayana Bhaktaya Padam Padameva Sayati Brahmana Sthanam Brahmana Pujyate Sada Evam me tat puravritta Makshyanam Badramastuva Vyaprahat Vistrabdham Balam Vishnu Pravardhatam. Sage Valmiki says, this concludes the transcendental narration of pastimes of Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Sri Ramchandra, known as Ramayana. Composed by the great sage and devotee Valmiki, this epic should only be recited by those who have implicit faith in Supreme Personality of Godhead. For it is non-different from Lord Vishnu himself. Hearing even a single verse has the potency to eradicate all the sins committed by the person who promotes this literature, sponsors this literature, one who recites this literature, or one who listens to this pastimes of Lord Ramachandra. Therefore, those who seek liberation from the cycle of repeated birth and death always relish this great transcendental literature. The recitation of Ramayana grants one all the fruits of dharma, earth, calm, and moksha. Beyond that, it helps one to advance towards life's ultimate goal, the development of love of Godhead. And finally, may we all become blessed and inspired in Krishna consciousness. May the transcendental forms of Lord Ramchandra and Mother Sita forever remain situated in our hearts. Thanks for joining. Hare Krishna. Today will be next having a arti, and I know you have a long week, 9 days. It's not a short time. Of course, very few people may have listened to this Ram Katha, but by the blessings of Srila Prabhupada, Radha Govinda, and the whole Guru Parampara, I wish someday again we will meet and talk about Lord Ramchandra. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Oh boy, oh boy. Shut it off.